Welcome to the floor of IAE 2952. This is the lore tour, just the floor tours, I guess, of 2952. This is where I'm going to go around. I'm live on Twitch right now and YouTube. You can join us live every day. We'll be going live at noon every day, starting tomorrow on Saturday. But this is where we're going to go on the floor and talk about all of the different ships that are on sale, available on the floor of IAE and their manufacturers. Maybe a little bit about their lore, a little bit about their past, but giving you kind of a concept for what these are. So if you are a newer player and you're like, I have no idea what to look at, this should give you some context as to what each ship is designed to do, as well as a little bit of their backstory and why they were built. I am here with all these wonderful folks. Some people are pantsless, which is fine. And we're all going to kind of talk a little bit about Drake. So welcome y'all to Drake Day. Give you some context for Drake. Drake was founded in the mid-29th century. So only about 50 or 60 years after the fall of the Mezzers. And it was founded through a team called, group run by a woman named Jan Dredge. She and her team entered a contest for the UAE Volksfighter contest. So the UAE Volksfighter, the concept of it at least, was that it was supposed to be a low-cost, easy-maintenance fighter that could outfit frontier militia. The contest ended up being a bust, and the entry that Jan Dredge and her team made did not win. But the thing they did put, the thing they put together, they were very confident they could sell it on the civilian market. So they modified their designs a little bit to make it more civilian friendly and founded a company, which we know today as Drake Interplanetary. Fun fact, does anyone know why Drake was named Drake? Anybody here?
Because he liked dragons?
No, because it sounded cool.
Dracula?
Literally, it's just because they thought it sounded cool. That's all. So Drake is just the name that's cool name for them. That's why they did it. They thought it sounded neat. And that ship that they released was the AS-1 Cutlass, which we know today as the Cutlass Black. That ship went on to be an incredibly well-selling ship, and it caused the. Within 6 months, they opened, I think, 9 new facilities off-world. And within a year, they quadrupled their sales. And within 5 years, they're the 5th best-selling ship company in the UAE. So they had an absolute explosive growth, all thanks to Drake. And the other thing that really made them work really well was that they took over the old UAE ship manufacturing facility on Magnus because it would have been abandoned, but it had a lot of infrastructure that were already there. So by doing that, they made themselves very well liked to the people of Magnus. They also had access to some very high-tech infrastructure that they wouldn't have had otherwise for a very low price. So they've turned that around and used that very effectively to build their own fleets. Today, Drake is no longer run by Jan Dredge. In 2947, a sting operation done by the Terra Gazette got Jan Dredge to admit on camera that they didn't care to sell to pirates, because as things got better over time, less and less frontier militia needed cheap fighters. So the main customers for Drake soon became pirates. By 2947, 2/3 of all pirate ships were Cutlasses, according to the UAE transportation records. 2/3 of all reported pirate ships were Cutlasses. So during the sting operation, they got Jan Dredge to admit that she didn't really care about who they sold to as long as they had the money. This became a huge scandal and was forced her to retire. So the next year, Andon Arden, the current CEO of Drake Interplanetary, took over from Jan, and is still the current one. He's kind of changed a lot of the ways that Drake thinks about things and how they market themselves and what they build, but overall, Drake hasn't changed that much. With that being said, let's go over and look at some of the stuff. The biggest ship that's available over here, the Drake Caterpillar. Follow me. Let's go. Keep it up. So this is the Caterpillar. The Caterpillar is actually the second ship Drake ever built. Specifically, this ship was designed to take advantage of two things. One, during the mid-29th century, the UAE was undergoing a bit of a cargo crisis because at the end of the Meser era, many of the ship manufacturers and parts manufacturers who made parts for ships collapsed because they had close ties with the Mesers. So when that happened, there was just a lack of cargo ships available for most of the UAE. So Drake decided to throw their hat in the ring to build this. Another thing was that by 2860, just a couple years after the Cutlass, the Cutlass had already started to get a bit of a bad reputation. So Jan wanted something that was not military, that had no military at all, function at all, and that became the Cutlass, or the Caterpillar. The Caterpillar is fairly well regarded. At the time, it's kind of seen as an ugly duckling. Its design is old. This is not a cutting edge design in any way, shape, or form. This is very old design for ships, but it's modular. Each of these sections here, as you can see, where these landing gear goes down, all of these are modules. So it can hold up to, 6 modules. So each module can be swapped out for different things. You can hold cargo, you can hold extra crew. We don't know the extent of these cargo modules, but they are adjustable. So that, and the fact that this right here is a ship. And I don't mean the ship is a ship. I mean, this is a tiny little ship attached to a bigger ship. This is the command module of the Caterpillar. This command module itself is able to detach, and in theory, you could bring another command module in and swap it out. So you could do crew swaps in the middle of space pretty simply, pretty easily. So this is what made the Caterpillar super well liked. However, it started getting a little bit of a bad reputation itself because of a famous heist that occurred in 2905, I think. A Caterpillar burst out of local traffic around a planet, smashed into a ship that was laden with goods, using its front to kind of prow into the side. And if you look at the very front over here, let me show y'all. Excuse me. These right here are docking sensors. They're parking sensors. You can see right here. So they're designed to squish in a little bit, so you know, like, hey, I'm touching the side of a thing. Can be kind of a they use this as hooks. When they crashed into them, right here, these parking sensors, they crashed into the side of that ship and worked as a hook to keep the kind of as a temporary docking situation. This front opened up, and a huge group numbers of pirates jumped out of that ship and attacked the ship, overwhelming the security, grabbing their goods, and they left. Now the problem was that their Caterpillar was now stuck into the side of this bigger ship. So what did they do? They got into the little command module over there, and they escaped. So Drake has still had a bit of a reputation with the Caterpillar, even though it wasn't really attempted to. But the Caterpillars are still well used, even by Kovalex. That's their main shipping ship. From one of the oldest ships to one of the newest ships, let's go over here to the Corsair. So the Corsair is one of those things where remember I mentioned Andon Arden had a different idea of how Drake should be run. Well, this is one of those results. The Corsair is not a combat ship. I know, it may not seem like that with all of these massive guns on it, but it's actually an exploration ship. And that is the key with new Drake. A lot of new Drake ships will be marketed as something that is not combat oriented in any way, shape, or form. And even if it is, they try to emphasize other aspects. So the Corsair, built in 2952, this is the first year it's been released, is a long-range exploration ship. In fact, it has better crew accommodations than some professional exploration ships. It has a private crew for the entire crew, and it has a lot of reused parts from other Drake ships to kind of give it a little bit easier, make it easier to swap out. That's the other thing to note about Drake. Because they use the similar parts for almost all of their ships, it's fairly easy to find parts for Drake ships. Because if you have a Cutlass, a lot of the stuff that's in the Cutlass can fit into the Corsair. If you have a Corsair, a lot of the stuff could fit into a Buccaneer, and so on and so forth. So the other thing that's important about this, let's come to the back and I'll show you. Is the cargo bay. Let's go on back. So this cargo bay can hold a small ship. In fact, it can hold up to I believe a Pisces in the back here. I wouldn't be surprised if you could fit a cutter in here. Now, hard to tell, but I don't know if it's on or not. But you can fit a small snub ship in here easily with room to spare for more cargo. So on top of, if you go into that direction a little bit further, you get to the crew cabins. But this itself is a nice cargo ship. It has a nice volume for usage for other things as well. So plus personal storage and a bunch of other stuff like that. So that is the Corsair. Now, come follow me. We're going to go look at some of the other smaller ships that are here, that are on offer. Stay together. All right. So here is the newer section. These are all much newer ships here. We'll go to the old classic Drake ships a little bit later, the Cutlasses. But let's look at the other latest ship other than the Corsair, the Cutter. So, a little bit backstory, and we'll talk about this when we talk about the Vulture as well. The Cutter is the result of the VLT-3 program. The VLT-3 program was Drake's experiment into improved vertical takeoff and landing technology, though it is it actually stands for Vertical Landing Test, is what the VLT stands for. They built several experimental Cutlasses with these engines specifically. So they built these engines and put them on a Cutlass to see how well they would handle. And they did okay, but they mostly forgot about it until the Vulture, which we'll talk about in a moment. And after the Vulture did so well in terms of sales, they decided to use that as a way to kind of build out their retinue. To understand the reason for the Cutter, we have to understand Drake's relationship with MISC. Drake and Musashi Industrial Starflight Concern, or MISC, hate each other. They are rivals to the core. And the Cutter is an intentional shot at the Reliant. This ship is designed as a cheap alternative to any other ship that would get you started in the verse. It has some nice cargo, about the same amount as a Mustang, more than an Aurora. And it's got plenty of space. You can actually fit a mule in the back of this thing if you wanted to. It has its own quarters and some decent firepower, but not great. However, it still is able to, it's still so smaller. It's in the same market as the Reliant and probably much cheaper than the Reliant, to be honest. So this is Drake's attempt to kind of crack into that market, but it's also an Arden thing. This is not a combat ship. This is a starter vessel that is also a cargo ship. So you can see that all over this. This is the new kindler, gentler, cuddlier Drake, rather than the mean, vicious Drake. So you can they're released as of this IAE, and you can get your hands on them today if you want to. Pretty good. Now let's go look at the ancestor of this, the predecessor of the Cutter, the Vulture. So I'm not going to do the full breakdown, but the Vulture is Drake's single-seater salvage vessel. So the Vulture started life off as the VLT-3, like I said before. But there was a situation that happened. MISC lost one of its ships into a very high-profile loss. So they lost a ship that was filled with valuable art and minerals that had wandered into the crash and then ended up in a very irradiated asteroid belt. So no ship that was small enough had the right shielding to protect itself to get there. So no ship was small enough to get through the asteroids or had enough shielding to get through the irradiation. As a result, MISC offered a 10 million credit reward for anybody who could retrieve the black box of this ship. And Drake decided they were going to do it. So Drake took their experimental Cutlass, the VLT-3, added some salvage arms to it, some grappling arms, and were able to retrieve the black box. Now, there was a bunch of other hoopla that happened. MISC refused to pay them because MISC said that Drake stole the data from the flight recorder without their permission, and yada, yada, yada. That sort of thing happened. But the VLT-3 was eventually forgotten. As the whole major publicity event sort of faded away, Drake tossed it into a storage container and forgot that it existed. Until 2922, when a reclaimer made the most profitable salvage operation in human history. This reclaimer discovered a failed 22nd century colonization ship, and it was so valuable that each one of the crew became millionaires overnight. They were set for life. And this set off a craze of salvage, where a lot of people said, hey, it's a get-rich-quick scheme. I can get involved in the salvage operations. But there weren't a lot of salvage options. And then Drake remembered they had the VLT-3 that they could use for their own, as a salvage ship. So they developed the VLT-3 into what we know today is the Vulture. They removed the little grappling arms and they replaced them with these boom arms that allow it to cut, process, gather and process materials much faster than with more delicate arms. It also reduced the crew components to 1 from 2, because the original VLT-3 had 2 crew. And then that eventually ended up in the Vulture. Then the Vulture did even better because several Vultures found a once thought destroyed Genesis Starliner and 2 Hull A's, which had literally fused together in a crash and spun off course. 2 Drake Vultures found those crashes and those wrecks, and were able to get a lot of publicity for the Vulture. So the Vulture is one of the most popular ships that Drake sells. They still literally cannot keep up with demand, and the Vulture was only released in 2939. So it's only less than 20 years old. It's maybe about, 15 years old or so? So it's very, very young in terms of ship designs. But Andon Arden, when he took over, decided he was going to use the Vulture as their standard because it is a industrial ship. It has no combat real needs at all. So that's the Vulture. From the Vulture, let's go talk about some of the other more different ships. All right. Here's the last major, well, I guess not the last one, the last ship that is also a industrial ship, a career ship, and that is the Herald. Now, the Herald was released in 2946, pretty recently, and is the go-to ship for FTL Communications. So FTL Communications, the corporation that does a lot of info running, this is their ship that they use. It has a bespoke broadcast antenna. So if you look over here, these little triangles over here, they can expand, and when they expand, you can see the actual receiving array, transmitting receiving array. These here are hardened data systems. The whole thing is hardened against EMP attacks. And it in a straight line, this ship is one of the fastest, if not the fastest ship in the verse. It's really hard to catch this thing once it gets at full speed. And on top of it, it only requires one person to operate. So it is a very well-liked ship for what its job is. Its job is to go one place to another very fast. So it doesn't have a lot of guns, but it has a lot of defenses towards it. Now, from the Herald to the Buccaneer. The Buccaneer, to understand the Buccaneer, we have to understand the Herald, the Cutlass, and the Caterpillar. In the early 2940s, Drake was really focused, well, from about 2890s to about 2940, Drake was really focused on trying to get some of their ships to be as, how to put this, as diverse as possible. So the Buccaneer was designed to be flexible, to fill in roles that the other Drake ships didn't have. So the Buccaneer is built as a light fighter, but that wasn't its original design. Its original design was simply to be a fighter. What the Drake engineers did was they said, what are the limitations of the Cutlass and the Caterpillar? And can we make a ship that can go as fast or almost as fast as the Herald to escort the Herald? And that became the Buccaneer. The Buccaneer almost has the same top speed as the Herald, but it has much better maneuverability and firepower compared to the Cutlass and the Corsair, Cutlass and the Caterpillar. So the Buccaneer was directly built to be kind of the missing puzzle piece, the linchpin of defense and combat for Drake. And since then, it's gone on to be pretty popular. With that, let's go talk about the very first Drake ships, the Cutlasses. Come on, join me. Let's go. Let's walk. All right, welcome to the Cutlass room. Now, the Cutlass is the ship of Drake. It's important to remember that when we talk about Drake, there's an old saying from us who lived on Magnus, which is every Drake ship is a Cutlass. They're just different versions of a Cutlass. The Caterpillar, it's a long Cutlass. The Buccaneer, it's a tiny Cutlass. The Corsair, it's a fat Cutlass. The Kraken, it's an overweight Cutlass. All of these ships are Cutlasses. Every Drake ship is a Cutlass in some way, shape, or form. Either because they use the same parts, they use similar design language, or literally the same ship in some cases. So, with that being said, let's look at the very first Drake ship, the Cutlass Black. Come with me. All right, so the Cutlass Black, the vaunted AS-1 Cutlass. Now, it's very different from what it originally looked like. It was used to be much skinnier and much smaller. But as I said at the very beginning, the AS-1 Cutlass, or aka the Cutlass Black, was first developed in the mid-29th century, and it was specifically used for frontier militia. It was incredibly popular because the ship itself is very versatile. This ship is easy to work on. The parts are all made out of recycled materials. In fact, all Drake ships are made out of mostly recycled materials, so you can easily find replacement bits for hull paneling, if not make them yourself. And let's come in here and we'll show you a little bit more about the why the Cutlass is so well loved by so many people. So if you look back here, this is kind of the perfect example of this. If you look at the paneling inside here, you see that most of the paneling in here isn't really paneling. It's padded, exposed wires or something in many places, very industrial, not much in the way of any kind of detailed luxury with these ships. And that's the key. Yes, it means that Drake ships are a little harder to live in, but it also means that Drake ships are incredibly easy to fix. You don't have to claw your way through bulkheads to get what you need. And that's their appeal to the verse. And in game itself, these ships are built to be incredibly utilitarian. They don't do a lot very well, but they do everything okay. And the Drake Cutlass is the perfect example of that. It's a good cargo ship. It's a good people mover. It's a good combat ship. You can do pretty much anything you need in a Cutlass. The Cutlass can load in rocks and you can turn it into a mining ship. It can load ships of stuff and you can turn it into a cargo hauler. It has a lot of flexibility when it comes to any sort of job it wants to do. And that's what made it so popular in the verse. All right, I'm gonna go out the side here. Oop. Now, as I said before, the Drake Cutlass, because it was so easy to maintain, it became very popular with criminals who lived on the fringes of society and didn't have a lot of money or access to insurance to help replace their ships. So Drake became to get a bad reputation, especially the Cutlass, as being a pirate ship. So in response, Drake built the Cutlass Blue. Let's go over here. So the Cutlass Blue was built in just about 5 or 6 years after the original Cutlass Black was built. And the Blue itself is designed as a security ship. While the Cutlass Black was designed as kind of a multi-purpose ship, the Blue is designed specifically for law enforcement. It has a QED drive to prevent people from jumping out from into quantum. It also has extensive racks for storage, containment, restraint facilities, I guess you could say, that allow you to capture and store criminals on the go. Plus, it has upgunned weaponry, and it has lights. It has flashing lights. Now, the problem was that while the Cutlass Blue was very well received, it wasn't it didn't give them the reputation they hoped for. It didn't really boost their reputation. So, shortly after that, they came up with another modification to the Cutlass they could do, which was the Cutlass Red. Right over here. So the Cutlass Red is more than just an ambulance version of the Cutlass. The Cutlass Red is the standard ambulance of the UEE. Its sensors are incredibly powerful. And if you look at the very top of it, you'll see there's a little dish instead of a gun turret. And that is a bespoke dish that they use, which actually is about 25% more powerful than the standard, from any standard kind of sensor arrays you'd pick up on the market, which made it very good, not just as a good ship for search and rescue, but also for mining operations. So Drake built effectively a scanning ship with the Red that happens to have some medical bays. But because the Red is cheap, it's very easy to find, very easy to maintain and build, many hospitals began to use it. And by the 30th century, the Drake Cutlass Red was the hospital, the standard hospital. Pretty much everything in the verse has been built, in terms of hospitals, have been built around the Cutlass Red. Even the Endeavor, Misk's rival, Drake's rival Misk, with their Endeavor, is built around using the Cutlass Red as the standard storage ambulance for its Hope variant. And in an ultimate twist of fate, the UEE, who had rejected their case for the Cutlass, the original Cutlass, actually purchased several Cutlass Reds to use for behind the lines, local ambulances for their forces and in military bases, because it is the standard that everything is set by. So that is the Cutlass Red, still very popular ship, and probably the most well-regarded Cutlasses out of the public eye. The last Cutlass we'll talk about is the most recent Cutlass, which is the Steel. Now, the Steel is an Andon Arden creation, that is for sure. But the Steel is also, let's just say, just cool. Because while it is, yes, a dropship, it is a combat variant of the Cutlass, it's not really advertised as exclusively a combat variant. And I'll show you why. Yes, it's got lots of guns, but it has 18 seats. That's right, 18 seats for people to travel on. And because Cutlasses are pretty ubiquitous, you can see Cutlasses pretty much anywhere in the verse, these seats make it that you can turn any Cutlass into a transport. And if you, I don't know, you have the Cutlass Steel breaks down, you've got replacement parts that you can get pretty quickly or know how to get because it's just a Cutlass. So while Drake may advertise this as a combat dropship gunship hybrid, it's also a transport ship. Again, right along the lines of Andon Arden's vision for Drake. With that, let's go to the ground vehicles of Drake and the future of Drake Interplanetary. Let us go. All right. Welcome back to the ground vehicles of Drake. This is the Dragonfly. The Dragonfly is Drake's, how to put this? remember how I talked about the Buccaneer and how the Buccaneer was designed as kind of a puzzle piece, something to help synergize all the other ships together? Well, the Dragonfly was the first version of that. The Dragonfly is designed to work in pretty much any Drake ship with a cargo bay, and it's specifically designed to help increase the range. Say if you are going through a debris field, you need to go retrieve something at a wreck, but you can't get too close with your larger ships because you'll get damage from the debris. Well, you can pick through a lot of the debris with this Drake Dragonfly because they can hover in space. And on ground, if you need to go a far distance and you maybe can't fly, you don't want to risk getting hurt or lose the fuel, well, you can set down close by, take out the Dragonfly and fly your way there, hover around along the ground. So it's a very flexible ship that can be used as a snub fighter or a ground vehicle. It has room for two, and it also, or two people or one person and some cargo. Right. From that ground vehicle, let's go to the other Drake ground vehicle, the Mule. Now, the Mule is classic Andon Arden Drake. This is designed for frontier life in mind. This is not only a transport vessel, but it is also a delivery vessel. These little buggies can carry up to 2 SCU of cargo, plus boxes on the side, and they can fit in literally any Drake vehicle with a cargo bay. And yes, even the cutter. This can fit inside the cutter. The purpose of this is that you could load up this ship with cargo, load it up onto a Drake ship, again, land close by to a place you need to go to, but you can't, maybe they don't have a landing pad or they don't have there's no way you can get larger ships down there. You can roll this little guy off with your cargo and drive straight to the location. Or it can, with its little forks, can help load and unload places that do not have a lot of access to tractor beams because of, lack of energy, or just don't have a lot of infrastructure to be able to support loading and unloading. So this is, again, classic. It is a ship designed specifically for the people. It's a ship for the people. All right. From the smallest of the Drake ships to the largest of the Drake ships, let's go look at the Kraken. The mighty Kraken. This is the first Andon Arden ship that was released under his reign. And while it is a light carrier, it's actually deceptively small. It's only about the same size as an Idris, where, that's pretty big, we like to think, but the Idris is fairly small in terms of its size compared to even the Javelin. So this ship is designed to have maximal amount of space. The ship itself was always advertised as a multi-purpose ship. It is, yes, a frontier militia's kind of flying headquarters, but it could also be used for mining crews on the frontier, or salvage crews, or even transport. You can carry other ships on the flat top. And that's the uniqueness of its design. It does have 2 hangars, so you can support 2 smaller ships, but its flat top design means you can fit up to 2 medium ships and I think 4 other smaller ships on the top while it's going through quantum. And you can even repair ships inside of it as well. The Kraken is available for a limited time. They're limited quantities because they're very difficult for them to build. And there is a version of the Kraken called the Privateer, which is made exclusively by Cousin Crow's Custom Craft over on Crusader. So that is Drake, the Drake floor for IAE 25952. I'd like to thank you all for walking with me and talking with me, and those of you watching at home, I'd like to thank you for watching and talking with me. Remember, if you enjoyed this, we'll be doing this every day at noon Eastern, 1 Eastern at twitch.tv/TheAstroPub and youtube.com/TheAstroPub live. Come join us live. This will be out shortly, probably tomorrow morning, for those of you who missed it, so you can watch this kind of a cut down version of it, but we'd love to see you come in and join us live. And like I say every time, hope to see you someday in the black.